Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you probably noticed from the thumbnail for this video that this is one of my series of deck dives. A series where I work with a deck for about a month, and then I dive into the deck together with you, and we explore its usability, the characteristics of it, the art, symbols, etc., etc. So, I've got a deck that I've been working with for the last month, and if you are a regular viewer of the channel, you know that that deck has been, for the last month, the Baddeley Tarot. Yes? It's a lovely deck. It's an intriguing deck, and there's a lot to talk about with this deck. The creator of this deck is Jake Baddeley, name on the box. And it was published this year in 2025. It just recently came out. It's published by Blue Angel, if you're curious. And if you want to get it, you can order it from either Blue Angel on the web or on Amazon. I'll have a link in the description box below if you want to order it on Amazon. Jake Baddeley actually had some copies available on his own site, but they are sold out, as they say. At least they were the last time I checked. So I have spent a long time connecting with this deck, working with this deck, exploring this deck. And so if you're interested in diving into this deck, doing a deck dive with Derek, hang on. We will turn the camera down and we'll dive right in. Here we go. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our dive into the Baddeley Tarot, a journey of wisdom, myth, and transformation. And it truly is. It truly is that kind of a deck. And let's start off with the box. The cover of the box is wonderful. It's the image from the moon card. And you'll notice that the images in this deck are primarily this black grayscale on off-white. Yes? Now, depending on the light, it can look a little bit sepia tone, probably because of the top and bottom borders, but really it's on the grayscale. And it's gorgeous. The artwork is gorgeous. We see the top of the box is beautifully designed. The font is lovely. There's a little bit of gold foil on the top. If you look at the sides, yes, it has thumb cutouts, which is wonderful because just in case you accidentally close the box without the deck or the book inside, you can still open the box back up very easily. Very nicely, classically designed box, yes? Font is beautiful. The artwork used is beautiful. Here is the back of the bottom of the box. We can see some example cards, a nice text here explaining the deck. Fabulous. The book is chunky. It's 368 pages, and we'll get to that book in just a bit. Full color. Yes, it is. Relatively speaking, of course, because the cards are not that colorful, right? But still, full color. Glossy. Lovely. And if we look at the inside of the box, when you open it up, this is the cover of the book, and we'll get to it in just a moment. But the inside of the box is nicely covered, yes, with this orangish brown paper, very nice. The sides of the inside of the box are nicely decorated, and if we take out the cards and the book, the insert for the inside of the box is also very nice. And, I hadn't really paid much attention to this until now. But do you see the tree of life inside of the bottom of the inside of the box here at the bottom? I was I was convinced that the Tree of Life was not an important element for this deck. Nay, more than that, that the creator of this deck was deliberately distancing himself from associations with the Tree of Life for a very clear reason. So I'm a little bit surprised to see this Tree of Life here on the inside of the box, which would have made my understanding of the deck a little bit more complex, because, well, we'll get to that in just a moment. We'll get to that in a bit. But the box is lovely. Very sturdy box. It's held up very nicely. Nicely designed. And then we look at the book, the guidebook. Yes, the guidebook, nice cover. I have used this guidebook consistently while using this deck. And you can see the artwork is lovely. Tarot is a game of cards, a book with no words, a book of allegories, a book that can be read in any order and that can contain all the stories in the world. It is the journey of the soul. Very nicely written back text. Yeah, back cover text is lovely. Fabulous. Now you can see the aces, all the aces here on the cover. And then if we go into the book, the contents. Now here's that Tree of Life again, which is interesting because really this author does distance himself from the Kabbalah and from the Tree of Life and from Hebrew letter associations, etc. You can see from the table of contents here, yeah, we have a large, we start off with part 1, which gives a really good introduction of this deck. I would suggest, if you get this deck, to very carefully read the beginning part. The journey begins. First steps, deep roots of the Tarot, short history of the Tarot. All those are pretty much common in all decks, but when we get to the mysteries of the Tarot, the codes of the Tarot, the conclusion and the secrets of the ages, this part I think is really important for understanding the author's approach to this deck, because the author has reconstructed the Tarot. We also see in part 2 we get a good amount of content for each of the major arcana and the minor arcana cards. Yeah, and we'll look at those pages specifically. But the part 1, the introduction, goes from page 12 to page 101. So there's a lot of content here. It's not just the normal, Tarot began in Middle Ages of Italy and it came from a Turkish deck. And, you know what I'm saying? It's got some meat to it. So I really suggest reading that. And it's well written. You see that for each of the major arcana, we've got a few pages for each of the cards. Yeah, and we also have a few pages for each of the cards of the minor arcana. So that's a good amount of information. You know how some guidebooks, they go so heavy into the major arcana that when they get to the minor arcana, it seems like the information is very scant or skimpy. But this book really does cover all of that very well. The deck, I should say, is dedicated. I would like to dedicate this book to the goddess, in particular to my mother for the chance to be here, and my loving wife who has put up with my obsessions for so long. Very good. And here's part 1. Yeah, goes through here. And again, I very, very, very strongly suggest reading this part. It has a lot of information. Then we get into the major arcana. Yeah, so there will be a large insert of the image of the card on all of the entries for all of the cards. Major arcana and minor arcana. There's a short description underneath that insert image, which gives you basically a base meaning if you just want to refer to that. Then each of the cards has the mystery, which describes the card and the concept behind the card, the message when upright, and then the message reversed. A good amount of content. And I referred to this book non-stop because this deck really asks you to learn this new... I would call it a new system of tarot. He has really restructured the major arcana and the minor arcana and created a new kind of... It's still a tarot. It's still got 78 cards. There are still 22 cards of the majors. There are still 54 cards of the minors. Each of the minors are in 10 numbered cards from 1 to 10 and then 4 court cards. It's the same structure. But he has reorganized it and reassociated the cards in very, very interesting and intriguing ways. Let's go quickly to the minor arcana just so you can get a sampling. Yeah, 3 of Swords. We've got this short description of what the card signifies. We've got the mystery, which describes the card, the foundations of the card. We have the message, the author's idea of how to read the card, upright, and then the reverse. So all of the cards are are described in great detail, and it goes right to the end. Now, at the very, very end, we've got some advertisements for Blue Angel. We've got a little bit about the author-illustrator of the deck, Jake Baddeley. Very nice photo of him. Yeah, we've got some end notes. If you want to write notes in your book, you've got space for that. And let's see. The guidebook is very, very usable. Yeah? Let's just go to the Fool. No, let's go to the Hanged Man. Because, for me, the Hanged Man is one of my favorite cards. That is why I call myself the Hanged Man in the Moon. Now, you'll notice that the Hanged Man is not number 12 in this deck, it is number 13. And we'll get to that in just a moment. The Hanged Man. Lovely image. Yes. Embrace suffering with resilience and compassion for a deeper understanding of joy amidst pain. Self-discipline and austerity may be necessary for spiritual purification and growth. That makes absolute sense. It really isn't very different from a standard description of a Hanged Man card, right? During the Renaissance, the man hanging by one leg was used to punish traitors, also seen in frescoes depicting hell. This was also Judas' punishment, reflected by the money bags. By the money bags the man in this image holds. It represents the deeper meaning of self-inflicted punishment. So we've got both. We've got self-inflicted punishment here. We also have the punishment for doing something bad, for betrayal, as in Judas betraying Jesus, right? Sometimes we are our own worst enemy, inflicting suffering upon ourselves through greed and attachment. The rope from which he hangs has a lock on it. Yeah, you notice that? There's a lock right there. And the keys for this are on his belt. The keys are here. He may free himself at any time, but will not, because he is unaware he can, or he desires the purification of atonement. So we've got a bunch of stuff here in this one card, right? We've got the probably more antique understanding of the Hanged Man as the person who is a betrayer, who deserves punishment, and then the more perhaps modern take of the Hanged Man, where he has placed himself in this position for his own purification, for his own atonement, that he has a way out if he wants it, whether he knows it or not. Yeah, the lock, the key, it's all there for him. Let's continue. Austerity and suffering are paths to cleanse the soul of sin and corruption. So we've got the sin, corruption, but that movement towards enlightenment is indicated here as well, as some hanged man cards point out. This was part of the ritual of preparation for the symbolic visit to the underworld in ancient Greece austerities. Now this is important. Visit to the underworld in ancient Greece. Austerities, abstinence, and purification had to be performed before the oracle was to be consulted. This stage of the journey of the soul represents hardship, despair, and the suffering of adversity. Experience is familiar to all who travel upon the path of life. Now, this deck is founded on, rather than the Kabbalistic traditions or the Hebraic traditions or the Egyptian traditions, if you want to go into that. Some decks are based on their concept of Egyptian traditions. This deck is very, strongly seated upon a foundation of the Pythagorean tetractys, the triangle of 10 discs. It's also founded on the Eleusinian mysteries in Greece. So this is based on Greek philosophy, according to the author of the book, and the deck, I should say. The message of 13, the Hanged Man, is that suffering is inevitable. Many people in life experience suffering, and those who haven't may lack a full appreciation for the good, having never encountered the bad. As in the Buddhist teachings, the Hanged Man is here to teach you how to deal with suffering when it arises. Perhaps you've experienced illness, or a loss of income, or a friend. Perhaps you've had to give up something in order to keep something dear. These conditions, and many like them, lead to suffering. By learning to let go of your attachment to these things, you can let the loss pass. Instead of rejecting the pain outright, you can recognize its role as a catalyst to letting go of what no longer serves you, your highest good. This experience also fosters compassion, as you recognize others' pain and can empathize with their loss. When you feel suspended in life, let the tears flow. Let them wash you clean. Let them purify your heart from guilt and regret. And, like a river, may they deepen the valley of your soul. When you embrace the tears of pain and sorrow, you purify your soul on its journey to rebirth and wholeness. And the Eleusinian mysteries bring us down into the underworld like Persephone, so that we can be reborn on the other side. Yes? Now, what does the card mean, according to the author of this book, when it's reversed? When the lesson of 13, the Hanged Man, is lacking, you are indulging in your desires for all manner of things, unable to let them go, even when you know they no longer bring enjoyment or satisfaction. So it's almost a little bit like the Devil card, right? In this instance, this card in reverse advises atonement. Purify your soul from the insatiable desire for pleasure by practicing austerity and abstinence, engaging in practices like fasting, reducing food intake, abstaining from sex, and avoiding alcohol, even temporarily, will promote significant health and mental benefits when approached thoughtfully. A physical and mental detox will leave you happier than constant indulgence ever can. This process has a deep spiritual working as well, opening the channels to the higher worlds. Now, it's a very nice, very grounded, very deeply philosophical approach to the major and the minor arcana. So it's a really beautifully thought out, beautifully described, rich deck full of meaning, and the book describes it very well. It gives us information about the images on the cards. It gives information about the philosophy behind the choices for the cards and the system of the deck. And if you're looking for a deck that you can use, referring to your, for example, Smith-Waite knowledge, or if you want a deck that will be easy to understand intuitively from the images, this might not be the deck for you. I believe, personally, that this deck asks for deep studying and a willingness and a desire to learn a new system of tarot. Yes, one that perhaps may be even more different than, for example, the Thoth Tarot is from the Smith-Waite Tarot, because they're both founded on the Golden Dawn traditions, and you can extrapolate one from the other if you really do understand the foundations of the Golden Dawn system. Yeah? However, this really is a reinvention. Does that make sense? So the book is very usable. It's wonderful. Does it have spreads in the book? Yeah, kind of. What do I mean? Well, we have 2 spreads. Count them 2. So if you are new to Tarot, if you've never learned Tarot, and this is going to be your first experience with Tarot, the spreads in the book are beneficial. Yeah, we have a very standard 3-card spread giving you past, present, and future, or mind, body, spirit, options, challenges, advice. Very nice, very brief and to the point. We've got a Celtic cross spread that is similar to the way I read Celtic crosses, and yet the ordering is a little bit different from my order. And the 10th card here is outcome, whereas I usually choose this card for advice. But except for that, it's basically the same, yeah? So, nice. 2 spreads. Great. But nothing new, and not all that much. But enough, I think. Enough if you're willing to practice with the information that's there. Now, my new discoveries with this deck. Let's start off with the description of the deck on the website. And while I am reading that description to you, let me put the cards right next to the book so you have something to look at. I'll show you the backs. These are the backs of the cards. Let me say that in correct English, yes. This is the back of the cards. Now, let me not read to you exactly, but let me summarize what the website said about this deck. Yeah, this deck was synthesized or precipitated from Jake Baddeley's visit to a place called the Skroveni Chapel. The Skroveni Chapel was founded by Enrico Skroveni in Italy. It's adjacent to the Augustinian monastery, the Monastero degli Eremitani in Padua, and it's dedicated to Santa Maria della Carità, yeah, Saint Mary of Charity, I believe. What he saw there was a cycle of paintings by Giotto. And the paintings were created between 1303 and 1305. And the paintings narrate the history of salvation in 2 different paths. The first one is the stories of the life of the Virgin and Christ painted along the aisles and on the triumphal arch of the chapel. The second is where this deck originates from, you might even say. The second begins with the vices and virtues, addressed in the lower section of the main walls, and ends with the majestic last judgment on the counter facade. And it's those vices and virtues that Jake Baddeley saw, and something struck a chord for him. And he saw the major arcana, not the minor arcana, but the major arcana take a new form for himself. Yeah? And now I'm going to read from the site. Yeah, for centuries, the true meaning of the Tarot has remained hidden, misunderstood, forgotten. But the truth has been hidden in plain sight all this time. There is a structure, a code, a master key that, when discovered, unveils the deeper meaning of the Tarot as a mystery cult, an initiation ritual. The clues are there in the images on the cards. They are painted on the walls of an ancient Italian chapel and woven into the works of Dante's Divine Comedy. So there's also the Italianate aspect of the deck that I hadn't mentioned yet. Each card, a myth, that when laid out in the correct order, together they form a ritual, an oracle, and reveal the path of life, death, and rebirth. This is the story of the Eleusinian mysteries, and the story of the soul's return to itself. Now, the Eleusinian mysteries is the mystery of Persephone going down into the underworld, and then her problem being helped by her mother Demeter, by Jupiter, by other gods, and her being able to come back out. But because she had eaten 3 pomegranate seeds, she had to go back to the underworld, to her husband, where she was queen, right? Hades, her husband Hades, in the underworld, where she is the queen of the underworld. Not a small thing. And then she comes out to visit with her mom several months of the year, right? That is the Eleusinian mysteries, and there's a whole cult of the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece, where people would go on a pilgrimage, there would be a procession, there would be several days of ritual and festivities. So, moving back to the website, connecting the ancient order of the planets with the template that is the Tree of Life. Now, I don't see that template in the book clearly enough for me. This deck reconstructs a broken masterpiece. It restores the crumbled edifice of Tarot to its original splendor and reveals itself as a forgotten path of initiation. This is the Tarot as it was meant to be. So, what does that mean? It's a wonderful description, and it's accurate, except really, I looking at the book, looking at the cards, it really looks to me like Jake Baddeley very clearly distances himself from the Kabbalah and from the Tree of Life, and really lands himself on the Pythagorean Tetractys, which, let me show you the Tetractys right here in the book. Let's see, it's here, just if we go inside, it's a Pythagorean Tetractys, it's in here. Oh gosh. Okay, so I'm not able to find it as easily as I thought I would. But the Tetractys is what? It's a triangle of 10. Yeah? If you saw my first video with this deck, you saw the Tetractys. Yeah? There's one at the top, the monad. Then the next row of 2 is the binary, the duality. The next row has 3 circles or dots. And then the last row has 4, all adding up to 10. Yeah? The row of 3 is the heart. It's the emotions. It's where the energy of the first 2 rows of the Tetractys manifests into the physical of the 4th row of 4. And the 4th row of 4 also reminds us of the 4 elements, etc. He also connects the deck with the humors. Phlegmatic, sanguine, etc. If you read the book, you'll see all of this, the medieval and Greek philosophies, all intertwined in this deck. Fascinatingly. Yeah? We have here the music of the spheres, woodcut. What do we see here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, I need to go back and read the meaning of that, the image again. It doesn't come right back to my mind. See, this is a really information-dense deck. But what the creator of this deck has done is paired up the vices and virtues with the major arcana and then some planets. Right? So instead of the tree of life where each of the cards is associated with a Hebrew letter, and then that relates back to the Sefer Yeserat, where each letter represents a planet, a zodiacal sign, or an element. The author of this deck, I think, has distanced himself from that and has reorganized the major arcana in relation to vices and virtues and planets. Yes? And then heaven and hell in the Last Judgment. Like the chapel that we just talked about, called the Skrovegni Chapel. Cappello Skrovegni. So, for example, the Fool is foolishness, which is paired with the Hermit for prudence. Interesting. Many people would associate prudence with the Hanged Man, but he puts prudence with the Hermit. And then both of these are associated with the planet Saturn, right? The Wheel of Fortune is related to inconstancy, the vice. The matched virtue is fortitude, which is fortitude, and the planet is Jupiter. Now, the Chariot is associated with wrath, the vice, which is paired with temperance for temperance, the planet Mars. The Hierophant, is associated with the vice of injustice, which is paired with the Justice card as the virtue. And then the Sun is associated with the Sun, which is the planet for this pairing. Yes? Then we've got the Lovers, which is associated with the vice in this deck of infidelity. Whereas the High Priestess is associated with its matching virtue, faith. And the planet for both is Venus. Not the moon, right? Not Gemini for the Lovers or something else, right? We've got Venus. The Emperor is associated with envy, which is paired with the Empress for charity. And the planet is Mercury, which is associated with the Juggler, which is the magician. And Mercury and the magician are very commonly associated. Yes, and then we have the Hanged Man, which is associated with the vice of despair. And then the pair is Hope, which is associated with the star, very common. And then we have the Moon as the planet, which is associated with also the Moon card. Yes? Now for hell, we put death, the devil, and the tower in hell. The heaven is the world, and then judgment, the last judgment is judgment. So this is how he has organized the major arcana for himself in his mind, as a progression towards judgment and then the binary of heaven and hell. Which is interesting, yes? The planetary associations are interesting, yes? But do you recall, even though the Hanged Man is ostensibly associated with the moon, there was no real reference to the moon in the description for the Hanged Man card, right? So it really does seem to me that the major arcana is not associated with planets, zodiacal signs, or Hebrew letters. If we look at the Empress here, we don't see any of that information, right? Interesting. Now, what do you think? Do you think that there might have been an interesting addition to have had the Hebrew letters added onto the cards as well? Yes? No? I don't know. There really is plenty to learn in this deck without having to try and make those connections. But would it have been better? I don't know. That's something you would need to think about for yourself. Let's see. So the major arcana has been reordered. Yes? How has it been reordered in this deck? Let's look at this together. We start off with... Where are we? New. Magic of the Pips. The Swords. Mysteries of the Tarot. Let's just look at the table of contents because it's right there. Okay, so here. We go from the Fool, the Juggler or the Magician, right? The High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot. Until here, everything is the same. However, here things start going a little bit differently. Yeah, instead of after the Chariot, number 8 being either Justice or Fortitude, we have Temperance. And then Justice is 9, Fortitude is 10, and then the Wheel of Fortune is 11, the Hermit is 12, and then the Hanged Man is 13, Death is 14, which would have been Temperance, right? And then after that, we go back into the normal ordering. The Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, Judgment, and the World. So what he wanted to do is clump or to gather the... what do we call them in English? We call them the virtues together, right? Temperance, justice, fortitude. Interesting. Yes? Okay, so that's been reorganized. Another thing that's interesting about this deck, and I don't know, it might turn you off. It did not turn me off, but the elements have been reassigned. Swords in this deck are the fire suit. You can see here, fire for the swords. Right? The batons in this deck are associated with, can you guess? Oops, that's not the batons. Here are the batons. Yeah? The batons are associated with air. So batons and swords, they have flipped. What is the logic behind that? Well, Jake Baddeley has decided, and I completely understand, that swords are forged in fire, so that should be the fire suit. Batons are made out of wood. Wood comes from trees. Trees grow in the air, so that should be the air suit. I get it. Yeah? When I teach Korean students here in Korea, and I tell them the elemental associations, they understand the cups for water very clearly. They understand pentacles or coins being earth, no problem. They understand wands being fire. But then when I go to swords being air, they buckle. They say, what? Well, wait a second, why are swords air? That doesn't make sense. And then sometimes I say, well, we had to put air somewhere. If I don't really want to get into it. But sometimes I also mention that air is of the mind. We place air in the mind, and swords are also of the mind, yeah? A sharp mind, a cutting tongue, communication and mind. That's why swords to me are the air. But I get it. Other decks have reassociated elements and suits too. The Udes Picard deck, for example, had placed swords in the water because that's where you temper the steel, and then the cups were air. And the idea is that this is the crystal goblet of perhaps the Holy Grail, and so crystal transmits light, which is like air. Yeah, so we've all got to make our own associations, and yes, most people associate this elements to wands or batons being fire, swords being air, cups being water, and coins or pentacles being earth. This one reassociates them. If that's a problem for you, that's a problem. So, but for me, I was able to get around that without any struggle. Okay. So, one more thing to talk about with the minor arcana. And let me get out my little pile of minor arcana cards here before we actually dive into the cards themselves. Yeah? Minor arcana. The minor arcana cards are reimagined. Now, the aces are the monad, the one, the unity before the split into duality. Yeah, you can think of them as the seed, but it's more than the seed. It's the totality in the singularity, if that makes sense to you. Now, here's the Ace of Swords. You can see right here, we've got the fire glyph there. Yeah, beautiful card. Absolutely beautiful card. Curious why there are these empty circles there inside, but it's beautiful art. The twos, they are the binary. Yeah, they are the monad that has split itself into subject and object, right? So we get the duality, the binary here. That makes sense, yes? And then we go into the threes. And beginning with the threes, we start with planetary associations. So all threes in this deck are associated with Saturn. And you see one image of Saturn on this card. We see the glyph or symbol for Saturn here. Because this is batons, we see the symbol for air. And then at the bottom of cards starting with 3, we get zodiacal associations. The zodiacal associations are in the minor arcana only, and only with the numbered cards from 3 to 9. I think, we'll go back to this. I'm still learning this deck. So what we see here, Saturn is domiciled in Capricorn and Aquarius. So when the card is upright, the symbol for the zodiacal sign on the upper leg of the zodiacal wheel, if we separate the zodiacal wheel in half, not along the calendar where the new zodiacal year starts with Aries, but if we split it with Saturn and the Sun and Moon. So if we split it according to the 7 classical planets, there are 2 signs that are at the very top associated with Saturn, and they are these, yes, the sign of Capricorn and the sign of Aquarius. And then at the bottom, we have the two signs associated with the moon and the sun. So the direction of the wheel would go the downward moving, the incarnating side of the wheel would start with Aquarius and move down to Cancer. And then the return to spirit, the upward moving side of the wheel would go from Leo back up to Capricorn. Right? Does that make sense to you? So, in that sense, the zodiacal signs on the upward side of the zodiacal wheel are upright when the card is upright, and the downward moving signs from Aquarius down to Cancer are upright when the card is reversed. Let me show you. So when the card is reversed, you see that the Aquarius sign is now upright. Does that make sense? Okay, so moving on. The Four of Swords. All of the fours are associated with Jupiter, and that's kind of cool, yeah. Jupiter's symbol kind of looks like a 4. You see that this is an air suit because there's air, the Four of Swords. And here we have the zodiacal sign for Sagittarius and Pisces, both associated with Jupiter. Yes? And so Pisces would be upright when the card is reversed. Now, these two signs are on all of the fours, not just the Four of Swords. Yeah? And if you know that Sagittarius is a fire sign. Here it is on the fire card. Pisces is a water sign here on the fire card. So these zodiacal signs are not limited to their own element, which we'll talk about later. Why I think there could have been something else that could be added to this deck. Okay, so the Five of Coins, the fives, all fives are Mars. And here you see we have Scorpio upright. That's on the upward moving side of the zodiacal wheel. And here on the downward moving side of the wheel, we have, what is that? Aries. Both of them are domiciles for Mars. And then we move into 6. All sixes are associated with the sun. And there's only one sign that the sun is domiciled in, and that is Leo. And so this is the Leo symbol or glyph, symbol, when the card is upright. There's nothing for the reverse side here. And this is cups, and you can see the water symbol or the water glyph there. Yes? Not sure what this is. Just saying, I'm not exactly sure what that is. It's supposed to be the sun, I think, but it doesn't really look like a sun to me in this card. In other cards, it looks more like the sun. Okay, so here we are with the sevens. All sevens are Venus. And this is a sword card, so it's fire. The two zodiacal signs in which Venus is domiciled are Libra. So on the upward side, it's Libra. On the downward moving side, it's Taurus. And here on all of the eights, we have Mercury. And Mercury is domiciled in two signs. One of them is Virgo. So Virgo is on the upward moving side of the zodiacal wheel. And on the downward side into manifestation, we have Gemini. And here's the symbol for Mercury up there, because this is coins, this is Earth, and here's the Earth glyph in the upper right-hand corner. And then we have, for all nines, we have Luna, the moon. And the moon is domiciled, of course, in Cancer. And here's the glyph for the moon right there. And because it's swords, here we have the fire sign. And interestingly, for the tens, all tens are associated with the earth. Now the final manifestation, yes? And so we've got swords, it's air, and here we have a symbol for the earth. But there's no sign. There's no zodiacal sign for the earth, right? So these are blank. Does that make sense? So that's how this deck is organized. It's all very, very interesting. Let's briefly talk about card quality. The actual card stock. So the card stock itself is pretty darn thick. When all of the deck is together, let me put that here. Yeah, this is not all the deck. It's a pretty chunky deck. Yeah, and even after working with it for a month, it takes a lot of strength for me to still riffle shuffle this deck. It's a little better, but in a month, it has not really broken itself in all that much. So this cardstock is very stiff. On the other hand, it's very durable. Yeah, you don't see any marks or dings on the backs of these cards, right? Yeah, these cards are very, very sturdy. And so they're also a little bit difficult to shuffle for me. Also, overhand shuffling with this deck is easier now. Yeah, I can pretty much do it. It doesn't clump as much, but at first it clumped like, I don't know, like glutinous rice underneath sushi. Yeah, it really clumped a lot. So at first, what I did was, instead of overhand shuffling in this direction, yeah, what I did was overhand shuffle in this direction. Yeah, so even when the cards clumped, wanted to clump, I was able to get them to shuffle well enough. Yes? So, cardstock, way too thick, but durable. The backs, I think, are lovely. Do you agree? Now, they're reversible. They are not reversible. I'm sorry. They are not reversible backs. The images are the same, but you can really see the light side and the dark side. So what do you think? Is this card upright or reversed right now? Right now, it is upright, right? If this card, is this card upright or reversed? Right, it is reversed. So if you are sensitive to backs showing whether a card is upright or reversed, if that is troublesome for you, then this might be troublesome for you. Also the moon. You can see that the moon faces this way when it's upright and this way when it's reversed. So there are many indications. But to me, that don't bother me at all. Yeah? So, yes, durable, doesn't show wear, but difficult to shuffle. The size. Let me pull out a Make Playing Cards standard tarot card. They are exactly the same size. Now they are exactly the same size here. And in case you're curious, this is the an old version of the CS Tarot Crackleback from Make Playing Cards. If you want to get a link for this deck, I will ask me in the comments below, and I will upload a link for that deck, or at least the closest one that he still has available. That's a fairly old version. Okay, so artwork and design. I already mentioned it's durable. I mentioned that the shuffling improves over time a little bit, but still it's a little challenging for me to riffle shuffle. And I shuffle in reversals, just so you know. Every time I shuffle this deck, I shuffle in reversals. So this is how I do it. Yeah? I can do it, and it does bridge, but it still takes a lot of thumb strength for me. Let me put this upright. The artwork is beautiful. Yeah, I will never say that the artwork for this deck is not beautiful. It is gorgeous artwork. Here's the King of Coins. Lovely. But it is because of the kind of line work. It's very fine line work, and in some areas the line work is so dense, it takes me, I really have to look at it for a while before I can focus on what I am seeing. For example, in this King of Coins card, can you see that there is a zodiacal wheel here behind the king? At first glance, I would just pass that over. Yeah? And it's hard for me to tell what this thing is because of all the line work around it. Does that make sense? It's hard for me to see what is in this coin at first glance. I have to really look at it before, oh, I see the pattern there. Yeah? And because this top is so busy, I don't even really notice this checkerboard bottom at first glance, or the decorations on the breastplate at first glance. I've really got to spend time on each one of these cards. Some more than others, but this is not a kind of card like these keys. Do you see these keys here? I don't see them the first time I glance at the card. The images are rich. Do you see the horns here? That's easy for me to pass over because of the density of the line work. But it's beautiful. And it takes time for me to see. One thing that you might notice, let me get another card here. Okay, so let me do this one and let me put the tower here beside it. You can see both of these, right? So for major arcana and minor arcana, one thing that frustrates me a little bit about this deck is, and I don't know, perhaps it frustrates the creator of the deck. Perhaps Blue Angel required the creator of this deck to format these cards in this way. Maybe. I don't know. But look at the Four of Batons, right? We can see the batons here. We can see that it is the fire suit. We can see the number 4 right here. And yet we have that same information repeated in the brown border. So if this brown border were all lopped off, we could still get all of that information from the card. Even more so from the major arcana. You can see this here. We have the number here, we have the number here. We have the name here, we have the name here. That redundancy irritates me just a little bit. Now, again, maybe Blue Angel said, no, you have to put the number and the title in the borders so that people can see it easily, so it's easy to read. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe Jake Baddeley decided that all on his own. For me, part of me wants to just lop off these top and bottom borders and leave this as an almost square deck. There are 2 reasons why I've decided not to do that. One of them is this cardstock is already so thick that if the cards were smaller, it would be even more difficult to shuffle. Right? Having a little more length gives a little bit more bend to the cards. Does that make sense? The second reason is that I like the look of it. I like having this brown border on the top and the bottom with these fairly black and white cards. It adds a little bit more of an antique feel to the image. The cards would, I think, look a little less vintage, maybe, because we'd be left with, let me show you. We put just white here and put some white there at the top. Yeah, without those brown borders. Let's see. This is not the best way to do this, is it? But let's see, that's not the best way to do that. Let me. I want to pick something that's not brown. Okay. No, that's not a good. Let me just fold this. Okay, I will fold this. I'm sorry. I did not plan to do this with you, but I think this is useful. So, without these brown borders, you can see that the background is still somewhat sepia. Let's see, let me get my hands out of the light. You can see that the background is still sepia-ish. And it looks okay, right? It's a little bit black and white-ish. It's nice, but with the border, it gives a richer feel to me. I don't know. What do you think? Would you like the cards better without the borders? And remembering that the shorter card will make it even more difficult to shuffle if you riffle shuffle, or do you prefer these borders? I like them. I think they're nicely designed. I just wish that either this information were not in the picture because we've got it outside, or that they treated the outside differently somehow. I don't know. There's one more thing that is a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say irritating, but a little bit disappointing to me, is the repetitiveness of this circle within the square frame, this circular frame within the square frame. Yeah? It's so ever-present. It's so ever-present. It's so repetitive that it becomes a stylistic wash to me. It starts to lose meaning, and it becomes just something there in the background. Now, here we've got this idea of the squaring the circle, which is significant symbolically and philosophically, but generally, let me pull out. Okay, so generally, they're just like this extra little round border inside of the card that doesn't really, it contains, I guess, a little bit, but every card has it. And sometimes a leg is inside and one outside of the circle, but it's just there in almost every one of the cards, and it just seems to, for me, it loses meaning because it's everywhere. Does that make sense? Now, there are a few cards that are a little bit different. Yeah? For example, this one, where there's a triplicity, there's the three circles within the large circle, that stands out to me a little bit. Yeah? In the High Priestess card, we've got two circles here. That stands out. And her heart is right there in the middle of the Vesca Pisces, so are the keys, so is the banner. That gives a little bit of significance, yeah? Again, the doubling of the circle here with Judgment makes one of the circles a sun, the other, it highlights one of the circles, yes? And then there are two cards, count them, exactly two cards without those circles. One of them is the World, where we've got, instead of a circle, we've got a flaming Vesca Pisces there. Wonderful. Interestingly, we've got the wheel of the zodiac around in the shape of a Vesca Pisces. And it's interesting that instead of, this would have been better, I think, instead of having the Aquarius Capricorn split up here, following the concept of the rest of the deck, I think, the wheel is shifted a little bit to the left. An interesting choice. I'm not sure I understand why he did that. Also here, no circle on the Queen of Swords. Right? We've got this beautiful arch. So that separates her art to me from the rest of the deck very clearly. It makes her look a little bit like a Madonna to me. Now it's interesting, this Queen of Swords does not have the glyph up here for either water for queens all being water, right? And swords being fire. Neither of those are up there. Let me double check. One of the other court cards. One of the other court cards. Where? Let me pull out another court card. Knight of Cups. Yeah, okay, so here, you see on the Knight of Cups, the water glyph is here, the cup is there, right? Now, it would have been interesting to have a distinction. Are all knights in this deck going to be fire, or are they going to be air? It would have been nice to have had that indicated here, but, that's okay. Okay, so that's how the artwork and the design of this deck was created. Yes, I like those cards that were different because they don't have that round background. That round insert frame. I like these because of the change in that round insert frame. I like these a lot. The Wheel of Fortune, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. The Wheel of Fortune also does not have that round insert frame. So these are the cards I like the best in the deck. The others are all pretty much the same. I don't have a card that particularly stands out as, oh, I wish this were different, or a card that stands out and says, oh, this one really is meaningful to me. They're all kind of a wash because they're all very, very similar to me. So that's good, I guess. There are no cards I'm balking at. I'm saying, oh, get this out of my deck. But neither is there a card that stands out and says, oh, wow, this is my favorite card in the deck either. Except for these are my more desired cards in the deck for those reasons that I told you. Now, how does it read after a month? Well, I've got to tell you that this deck, for me, will take more study to be able to read it without the guidebook. Yeah? Is it an intuitive read? I don't really think so, at least not to me. I mean, I know a little bit about Venus and Cupid, but what does that mean in relationship to the zodiacal signs, and what does it mean in relationship to... Oops, there is one little ding here that I had not noticed yet. Okay, so dinging is possible in this deck. But what does that mean for the Seven of Batons? I really need to go back and look at the book. I would need to study and learn this deck anew, as a new thing in my tarot library. Yes? I showed you the cards I liked a little bit more than the others. I didn't really have problems with any of the cards. The symbols are there, but not quickly meaningful for me yet without the guidebook. My connection to the cards has not deepened significantly because I feel like I'm still learning them. Yeah. So, what I'd like to do now, before I give you my overall impression and my things that I think might have made the deck better. I've got some ideas about this deck that I will tell you later in the video. But first, what I'd like to do is show you, just as a reminder, some of the spreads that I have laid with this deck. And then I will show you the deck interview I did, and then we will read that deck interview together. Okay, friends, are you ready for that? So, stay tuned. I'll show you some spreads, then I will show you the interview spread for this deck, and we'll read it together. Here we go! Friends, you just saw the basic format or form of my interview spread, my deck interview spread for for all decks, yeah? Also for this deck dive series. And then you saw a picture of this spread as well. And this is the best that I was able to get it into our frame here with my setup, with my video setup. So you can see most of the images pretty clearly, I think, but maybe not as well as possible. Let's go with it as it is. Yes? And for the positions of who are you in relation to the deck, we have the Knight of Batons, which again is air, reversed. What are your strengths? We have the Emperor upright. For the weaknesses, we have the Knight of Coins reversed. That was interesting, yeah. For the weaknesses, a reversed card. That makes sense. For what you are here to teach us, we have Justice reversed. That made me feel a little bit queasy, honestly. And for the blessing I can receive, or we can receive from you, we have the Six of Swords reversed. A lot of reversals in this spread, right? making me think there's a little bit of resistance or reticence about the deck itself. And then for how we can work best together, we have the 10 of batons reversed. So the batons, again, are air. Remember that. So it's similar to the 10 of swords in some other decks. And then here for the outcome, the probable result of our working together, we have finally an upright card, the 8 of Cups, an emotional card, yes? Mercury, a good magician card, right? A good magic and divination planet and god. So that's kind of cool. So we start off with the Knight of Batons, and I love one of the things I love about the batons, especially in this Knight of Batons, is that we have the clover here reminding us of the French suit of playing cards, right? The clover, the club for the batons. I kind of like that. Knight of Batons, lovely image, lovely card. We see that it's air. We see a lot of beautiful stuff, but these wings here on his helmet, I guess reminding us of air, but honestly, I think there are also wings on the fire card. Let me just pull out the Knight of Swords. I think I had that out. Okay, Knight of Cups has antlers. The Knight of Swords, let's see. So the Knight of Swords looks to me like has these feathers coming out of his helmet, which, I don't know, they look like feathers to me. They're a little bit like antlers, but also like feathers, and that makes me think of air as well. So I don't know. Some of the symbols that are not like beat you over the head symbols, like, oh, that's a club, that is air, that's a knight, right? Don't really sink in for me very well. So that's probably my problem. But so we had this Knight of Batons in reverse for our self-description of this deck. And what is that telling us? It's telling us that the deck lacks authenticity. It has a fickle mind. It says one thing and means another. And it has a need, or calls for us. It calls from us the need to reconnect with self and interact with others genuinely. The deck calls for us and itself to ground ourselves, to prevent losing direction, and the need to embrace pragmatism. So, the deck is telling me that it's a little bit flighty, that it's a little bit, perhaps a little bit too wound up in its own fantasy of thought, and it hasn't grounded itself completely yet. It needs some more practical information, some more pragmatism. Does that make sense? That's what the deck told me about itself. Just saying. That there could have been a little bit more authenticity to it. Now, the Emperor, what are its strengths? Well, the Emperor upright, what do we see? We see the double-headed eagle, very good. We've got the sun here behind the Emperor, seated on a throne, very nice. The Emperor's legs are not in that 4 position that many emperors have, but that's fine. Don't really see much association here with Aries, right? Because the Emperor is not associated with Aries, but in this deck. But we don't see many associations with anything, to me, in this card. No Hebrew letter, no planet, no element, no zodiacal sign. I don't see any of that. We've got a lovely laurel wreath around, like a victor's wreath around the king's head. Nice. Fabulous. City there in the background. Nice. Beautiful. The orb of power on the on his knee. We've got a scepter of power in one right hand. Fabulous. So what is this card telling us? Well, the Emperor unifies our diverse impulses in our lives. The Emperor can marshal chaos and can bring decisive clarity. There is the potential for pragmatism, for discipline and decisiveness, and that those qualities can help it thrive, can help this deck thrive. This deck can lend strength and gravitas to whatever answer that we're giving to a question. So it does have some of those qualities of pragmatism and discipline and decisiveness that this card points to a lack of, but maybe these cards together are telling us that it has some, but it could have more. Right? And then we move on to its weak points, which is the Knight of Coins reversed. And what do we see here in this Knight of Coins? Yeah, we got a knight with antlers, yeah, a coin being held up there. We see what looks like maybe a ram's head right down there on the belly of the knight's, breastplate. There's a shield down there at the knight's knees. We see the glyph for earth. We see what looks like a sun here in the corner. I'm not sure what that means. We see Knight of Coins written right inside the card as well as on the border. Lovely art, lovely gesture of the knight raising the coin with one arm and pointing slightly, gently, very elegantly down with the other hand. Beautiful, beautiful work. What's it telling us? It tells us that there is a quality of deception to this deck. And that deception could be self-imposed or imposed by others. This deck could be deliberately deceiving us, or our reading of it might be inadvertently deceptive. There might be some truths that this deck is not willing to face. It might have the tendency to be manipulative and calls from us some self-reflection. And that self-reflection was indicated, as you recall, up here. Because we could lose direction. And to find our direction, to find some pragmatism, self-reflection could be helpful for us. Because, again, this Knight of Coins is reversed. Again, we've got a little bit of a lack of pragmatism here too. So the strength of this pragmatic deck is weakened by its own lack of pragmatism, those qualities, yes? So what is this deck here to teach us? Justice reversed. And let me show you this Justice card. I love the pillars. We've got the scale. We got the sword. We've got a laurel wreath behind the head of the Justice figure. This Justice is not blindfolded. We see both feet of this Justice card. The knee of the Justice figure is not manipulating the scales. Some decks, it does look like it. Lovely card. The sword is pretty much upright. I'm not sure what this is in this circle, and looks like a Libra symbol here. Although I don't think this card is associated with Libra in the deck. I think this is just scales. Yeah? So what does this card mean when it's reversed according to the guidebook? It says, warning against prejudice, dishonesty, and acting out of self-interest. Self-knowledge gives insight as to how we distort our perception of truth. Noticing how often we judge others and how biased our opinions actually are. That's what this deck is here to teach us. To look for self-knowledge, to look for insight. to notice our biases and our opinions are of others, and how our opinions are not as balanced and fair as we perhaps think that they are. And that we might be acting in a self-interested way, and that we want to notice that, right? Good things to be pointed out. Not the happiest of things, but good things to be pointed out. And then for what we can receive from this deck, what is the blessing? We have the Six of Swords reversed. Let me put it upright for you here. We've got what looks like maybe a phoenix eating a snake, reminding me a little bit of the flag of Mexico, which is an eagle eating a snake, but still, a bird eating a snake. We've got the fire for the swords. We got what looks like a sun glyph there. We've got Leo, right? Leo there, the sun. I'm not sure what this design is. We can see the 6 dots here for the Six of Swords. We see the swords. We see Saul, the sun. And what happens when Leo is in reversal, in the air? I'm sorry, not in the air, in fire. So we got fire here. Leo is a fire sign. So we've got Leo in a fire sign. I'm sorry, we have got Leo, which is a fire sign in a fire card, reversed. Now, according to the book, this indicates what? Shifting focus to what brings joy rather than to what brings us down. Looking for the joyful things in life. Being kinder to ourselves. Reminding ourselves of past success and self-worth, letting light into our lives. So if we remember how there have been times when we were successful, there have been times when things did go well, that we did feel valuable. Remembering those times helps to let light into our lives, and that is the blessing of this deck. And this deck can shift us to focusing on what brings us joy. And if you saw the spreads I read with this deck, those spreads really did seem to be pointing in that direction. How do we shift in the direction of love and joy? Yes? And now here we have the 10 of batons reversed for how can we best work with this deck. So we have the 10s are all earth, terra. We have the earth glyph. We have a sign for the earth here. No zodiacal signs, right? The earth is not domiciled in any of the zodiacal signs. So, the way to work with this deck is to recognize that our minds are still turbulent. That we want to bring order to chaos. Remember the strengths here? Bringing order. Being systematic in the 10 of batons reversed. Being practical. We might want to divide our tasks into small, manageable steps. Implementing mindfulness practices as well. So doing some meditation. And if you saw the 4 spreads I did with this deck, they did seem to be moving us week by week in a logical progression towards greater evolution. Did you notice that? If you did, let us know in the comments below. If you did not, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. What did you see in the progression of the story of the spreads that we looked at together? What did you see? A beautiful card here. We also see Terra. It almost looks like Venus and Cupid, but this is not. This is Terra. Lovely card in reverse. And finally, what is the probable outcome of this deck? Moving on from what no longer serves us in this 8 of Cups, what do we see? We see Mercury, young Mercury, playing a flute, holding a cup, the sign for water. We've got 8 cups around Mercury, all joined into an 8-pointed star. Lovely image. We've got the glyph for Mercury right there. Mercury's got his winged hat on. Don't really see wings on his feet, but that's okay. We can feel, in all of these cards, we can feel the fabric moving, right? Or having been artistically laid upon the laps of, or the shoulders of people. The movement and the texture of all of these images is just phenomenal. Here we see, because this is upright, we have Virgo upright here. And in reverse, if this had been reverse, we would have seen Gemini upright. But we got Virgo here. So what does that mean to have an Earth zodiacal sign upright in a water card, which is the domicile of Mercury? Well, according to the book, it means that our possible outcome is that we move from what no longer serves us. Now, this deck helps us take steps towards change, exploring new opportunities. The deck helps us to have honest talks about relationships and trying new things. It might point towards classes, hobbies, a new environment. And it helps us give ourselves permission to seek real joy. And yeah, all of this deck and all of these cards seem to be pointing in that direction, the way to find joy. Now, it has some problems. There might lack some authenticity, some pragmatic direction, right? But there are a lot of benefits for this deck. And I think this interview spread did, in the long run, point in the direction of the way that this deck speaks to us. And I hope that you noticed that as well. Now, what do I think about the deck in general after using it for a while? Is it beginner friendly? I would say no. But that's my prejudice, yeah? For me, okay, so it's beginner friendly in the sense that the book has plenty of information to learn tarot. But if you learn tarot with this deck, you're not going to have an easy time, I think, with other decks. I think this guide is for this deck alone, and this deck is different enough from other decks that this knowledge that you get from this deck will not be transferable to other decks. Yes? So, for me, I would guide a beginner toward a Smith-Waite traditional deck, perhaps a Thoth deck, if Thoth is interesting to them, or a Marseille deck. And have a beginner start with one of those three. I would not direct a beginner to this kind of deck. I would suggest that this deck is mostly for advanced practitioners who want to expand their toolbox of ways of approaching tarot in their library. Yeah? The kinds of readings that this deck gives are very philosophical, very life path oriented. This deck is all about the Eleusinian mysteries of going down into the underworld and coming back up on the other side. And that's the kind of reading that the cards give through the guidebook. Yeah? Now, I like the deck. I've been talking about it for long enough. I hope you'll know that I really do like the deck, and it's a challenging deck. But I do think that there were a couple of really powerful opportunities that were missed by this deck. One of them is, now maybe the artist was thinking about this and didn't include it in the guidebook. If the artist was thinking about what I'm thinking about and did not include it, that's even more irritating to me, because I really dislike system creators who hide their information and want the initiate to go out and find it themselves, right? Because I think even if you do explain or include diverse information in the guidebook, it still will take time for the initiate to really absorb all of that information and for that information to come alive, to be able to be used practically in readings. Yes? I don't think we do anybody any service by hiding occult information from the guidebooks, personally. And I strongly dislike what orders, cults, and groups of secrecy like that if they're going to publish something for public consumption. Right? That being said, so if the author was already thinking about these things, then shame on you. You should have put it in the book more clearly. If not, I think there's a real opportunity missed here. What is that? So let's look at these minor arcana cards first. Let's look at especially one of the ones with two. Okay, so okay, let's see. Gemini, Virgo, water, not such a big problem. Let me pull out another card here from the minor arcana. Let's do air, Mars, fire, air, water. Okay, no, let's not do that one. How about this one? We've got Saturn in Earth, and we have, yes, okay, so let's pull out this one. Okay, so let's, let me clear off the deck a little bit, and let me show you what I'm thinking here. Put these, bending the card, don't do that. Okay, I just got rid of one of the ones I wanted to use. Where are you? Let's come back to me. Come back to me. Here. Okay. So, there we go. Yes. Okay. So, let's start off with the Eight of Cups. So, in the Eight of Cups, Mercury, Virgo, Gemini. What I think would have been even better is if, when we're associating Mercury with these two zodiacal signs, and we've made the decision that the signs that are on the upward rising side of the zodiac would appear upright when the card is upright, and then the signs that are on the descending side of the zodiacal wheel would be upright when the card is reversed. Because we have done that, it would have been more interesting if it was highlighted that Mercury in Virgo, in the in a water suit, for example, what does that mean? What does it mean when Virgo, which has Mercury living in it, enters the water? What does that interaction mean? Yeah? So when it comes to Virgo being an earth sign in a water element, they're fine together. Yeah? They're not ill-dignified, they're not dignified, they don't build each other up, they don't tear each other down. They walk comfortably together, right? When it's reversed, then we've got Gemini in water. Yeah? So that's air and water. They, I'm sorry, wait a second. I lied. Okay, so I lied. I made a mistake. So, Virgo in water, they are actually well dignified, right? They support each other. So, Virgo here being in a water sign, when it's upright, that gives us a very positive, strong combination. When it's reversed, sorry, we've got Mercury in Gemini in water. So it's air in water. They don't fight with each other. So it's sorry. In reversal, this card is still okay. But what does it mean when Mercury in Gemini enters the water? If that were discussed in the guidebook, that would add some really strong symbolic information to the card that would flesh out this new system, I think. Now let's look at the Three of Coins, because here we start to find some more challenges, right? So here we have Saturn is all the threes. The two signs are Capricorn and Aquarius. And right now we're in an earth sign, right? So Capricorn in an earth sign, they are the same. Capricorn is earth, in the earth, upright, it's all copacetic. All is good. So what does that mean? And then when this goes in reverse, however, then we have Aquarius, we have Saturn in Aquarius, its domicile, in the earth. Air and earth are now ill-dignified. That means they fight with each other. They rob each other of energy. So when this card is reversed, then we've got this idea of reversal. We've got a very strong, positive matching and positive message possible here with Capricorn in the earth. And we have a strong, negative, tension-filled relationship in reversal between the air and the earth. Does that make sense? And if the author, if Jake Baddeley works that out in the guidebook, that would have made these cards mean so much more, I think. And then what happens when we've got something different? What do I mean by something different? For example, we had the Three of Coins, right? What about the Three of Swords? Yeah, let's find the Three of Swords here. Let's see, King of Batons, the Ace of... So actually, I meant not the Three of Swords, but the Three of Batons, because the Three of Batons is the air. Yeah? So let's look at these two together. We've got the Three of Coins for the earth and the Three of Batons for the air. Earth and air, if you know, are ill-dignified, which means they fight with each other. And so we've got Saturn on both of them. We've got Capricorn upright, and in reverse we would have Aquarius upright. So here, upright, earth sign, earth suit, everything is good, everything is strong. Upright, it's all good. In reverse, we've got some problems because we've got the ill dignity of Aquarius in the earth. Air and earth, ill-dignified, right? On the other hand, for the Three of Batons, we'd have Capricorn, earth, in an air suit. So what happens when Saturn is in Capricorn and is ill-dignified in an air suit? So upright, we would have some tensions and some problems, right? Whereas in reverse for this card, now we would have Saturn in Aquarius, an air sign, in an air card. And so everything in reverse is now copacetic. Everything is good. They're matched. It's matchy-matchy, right? So I think if he really had gone all in on associating the planet to the zodiacal signs, to the suits, and had worked that out for himself in recreating the meanings for each one of these cards, that would have made this deck so much more important, right? Using the elemental dignities to rework the meanings of these cards would have been so much more powerful, I think. Another thing that I would have appreciated more is, now, so for the court cards, the author has gone with the humors. So that means that cups are, let's see, let me find the court cards and the humors here. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful system. There are your court cards. Transmigration of souls. Let's see, cups. Yeah, we don't really have that there. He talks about chakras. We've got zones, the fates in the sky, all wonderful stuff. Just a second. Here, let me show you this. Okay, so here we can see that fire is choleric because it is dry and warm. Air is sanguine because it is warm and moist. Water is phlegmatic because it is cold and moist. And the earth is melancholic because it is cold and dry. Now, those are the four humors from, I mostly know of the humors from medieval philosophy and medicine, actually. But here, he takes that and moves it into the court cards. So, for example, the King of Swords is fire of fire, very fiery, totally choleric. The Knight of Swords is air of fire. Good. So here it's clear. I forgot. It is clear in the book that for him, the kings are fire, the knights are air. The queens are water, the pages are earth. Now, queens and pages, almost everybody agrees. But many people see the kings as air and the knights as fire. I agree with this structure. So, the Knight of Swords, air of fire, which means warm, sanguine, which is warm, and sanguine choleric. Yeah? Queen of Swords, water of fire, which is balanced, phlegmatic, choleric. The Page of Swords is earth of fire, dry, melancholic, choleric. So you can see this whole chart yourself, right? All good. And he works that into the descriptions of each of the cards in the guidebook. However, I think, my dear, it would have also been nice to have had zodiacal associations to the court cards as well, especially the kings, the queens, and the knights. The pages can be the assistants of the queens, as in many deck systems. That's great. But if he had also made the choice that, for example, all queens are fixed, all kings are mutable, and all knights are cardinal. Oh, no, I'm sorry, no. So, for example, if he had chosen, I think the one that I'm more used to is that all queens are cardinal, all kings are fixed, and all knights are mutable. And so that would have made the Knight of Cups mutable water, which would be Pisces, right? And so included that Piscean idea into this, this airy water knight. Airy being, knights being air, suit of water, airy water, right? Which is what in the card, in this book, it gives us the idea of, let's see, airy water, that is moist, sanguine, phlegmatic, right? And adding that Piscean idea to this card in the image as well as in the guidebook, I think would have made the deck even richer, better even. Also, what I wish is that there were clear zodiacal, planetary, elemental indications on the cards for the major arcana. And yeah, you have to pick your system. And because he reorganized the, let's see, pulling out a major arcana card. Okay, so the devil, for example. Well, I'd rather use the fool. Let me find the fool. Because that one's the easiest one for me to... Or magician. Let's do the magician. Where's the magician? I just saw him. Okay, the magician. The Hierophant. The moon. The magician. Or that's right, it's the... there it is, the juggler in this deck. Okay, so... Let's talk about the magician, the juggler. So, in the tradition of the Golden Dawn, the magician is associated with Bet, the Hebrew letter Bet, and the planet of Mercury, right? Because the fool is associated with Aleph, and the Aleph is air. Aleph is one of the three mother letters and is associated with an element, right? Bet is not a mother letter, so it is associated with the planet Mercury. Okay, in most cases, not always, but in most cases. So if he had chosen to go with the Golden Dawn, he could have put Bet here somewhere and Mercury here somewhere. Or if he'd gone with perhaps older traditions, he could have said that number 1 is Aleph and put air here. Would have been great. And gone with the Sefer Yeserath. However, maybe he decided not to do that because he reorganized the cards in the major arcana, and so matching up the renumbered cards with the three virtues gathered together, maybe that made it too difficult or made it strange for him, and so he decided to leave that go. So for me, because that association is broken, that is why I believe that this deck has distanced itself from the Tree of Life. Now, you might argue that still we've got the Sephira of 1 to 10, and that 10 is the earth, and 1 is the monad at the top, that there's still the Tree of Life associations to the minor arcana. It's not strong enough for me to actually be a Tree of Life associated deck. Does that make sense? So, and I'm not saying you have to. I'm not saying you have to have all tarot decks associated with the Sefer Yezerah and the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. So if you're not going to do that, it might have been interesting to see how he might have reworked those 22 ideas of the 12 planetary the 12 zodiacal signs, the 7 planets, and the 3 elements in the major arcana as they are reorganized. What could he have done with that? That would have made it very interesting and much richer, I believe. It might have been too hard. I don't know. I just don't know. Yeah? So I really do believe this is an interesting deck. I think this is a deck worth studying and worth learning. I haven't had the time to go through and do the work that I'm suggesting with the minor arcana, with how do we associate those planets in those elements and those zodiacal signs and those elements in upright and reversed placements. That takes a lot of work, and I wish that the author had done that work, and I might decide to go ahead and try doing that work on my own But that's something that's going to take a long time, and I'm not sure if I'm going to invest that much time in this deck. We'll see. What would you invest the time in this deck? It's a beautiful deck. I really mean it. It's a beautiful deck. I love the art on the deck, and I like the idea behind the deck, and I really think it just fell short of the mark. Yeah? But what do you think? Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you purchased this deck, if you've used this deck, what do you think of the art, of the book, of the structure, the restructuring of this deck? I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about all of that? Also, I have got another deck planned out for us. Yeah, this deck is full of artwork with very fine lines. The next deck I'm going to be working with is black and white and has very bold lines, so stay tuned for that. So if you want to see reviews of decks that you're interested in, if you want to see me work with a deck and then do a deep dive into it after about a month, let me know in the comments below. What deck would you like to see me work with? I might already have it. If I don't have it, I might be willing to get it. So let me know. And I hope this dive into this deck was meaningful for you. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you were reminded of some things. And maybe you're enticed to purchase this deck and try working with it on your own. If you are, let us know in the comments below. Again, I'd love to hear from you. In just a moment, the QR code for my online tarot shop will appear before your very eyes if you want to buy a reading for yourself or for a friend. It's the giving time of the year now, so if you want to buy a present, you can buy them for somebody, you can buy them a reading from me. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.